We will start this finance committee for Monday, April 28th, 2025. And our first item on our agenda is public comment. And we have one public comment, Mr. D. Jones, if you could come to the podium. And I know we have 3 minutes, but you almost have it down, but I'm gonna still put the timer on you just so that I can be on point. All right.
How y'all doing? I'm D. Jones. Start off with, I'm the advisor for the Michigan High School Esports Federation, which is the largest K-12 esports organization in the state of Michigan. As you see, I have an article. I was actually on the news for NBC and Fox 17. Over 70 schools, 400 students registered for the event with 15 state championships crowned at the end. D. Jones, an advisor for the Michigan High School Esports Federation and founder of Jump Ahead L3C, an organization that helps local schools build esports labs, said esports is important because they level the playing field. It is important to get kids into esports because everyone isn't good at traditional sports. Some kids have disabilities, health problems, and traditional sports is harder for some people, but esports levels the playing field. Said D. Jones. That was a very powerful article. And then here, I got invited by Harvard Business School to help them with their online entrepreneurial platform. Like D. Jones is actually helping one of the prestigious best business schools on earth develop their online platform. So I'm very excited for the future of GRPS, the esports, all of the cool things we're doing with the summer initiative, because we're going to be using the Play Esports app to show kids how to stream, develop content, shoutcast, and have Full Sail University, Michigan State University, Ohio State University, Fair State University. There's a lot of colleges that are trying to get involved with this. Even luxury brand Shinola is trying to donate some stuff to give back to the kids. And they're also trying to partner because they have 3 pillars. So yeah, I'm helping one of the best colleges. I got accepted in this college for entrepreneurship, and it's just funny how the universe spins. I'm excited. And when we do the state championship, we already have these huge numbers in all of these schools. We're going to be at the DeVos Place in Ballroom C. I would like to pass the sponsorship form to the school district if you guys have an interest of sponsoring this event, because you already see how huge these esports can be, and it's going to be at the DeVos Place, who are doing unethical things, and we need to have them support to beat the Donald Trump. I already spoke about Donald Trump and it was viral, but we need to have him support education at DeVos's and the Grand West Michigan Policy Forum to change their policies. I'm going to keep standing on business. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, and then next up we have our finance, and it is an action item with the purchasing agenda. So I'll have Ms. Cribbs kind of go over that a bit for us, and then we will take a vote after that.
Okay, and our first couple items are adjustments to our blanket orders. It was about a year ago when we were working through and setting up these blanket orders, so a lot can happen in a year. The first one is for Applied Innovation, and that's our blanket order for in maintenance and lease agreements for all our copiers and printers across the district. So looking to adjust that to where we think it's going to come in for the fiscal year. The next 2 items down are for legal services. At the beginning of the year, we had some turnover in the legal department. We did appoint an interim general counsel, but also this year we've had additional investigations that came up that required the use of outside counsel to do the investigations. And as you know, we've had a tumultuous beginning to this fiscal year, so there's been a lot more tapping into legal resources just to make sure that we're staying current with what's going on. Comes to mind, one of them was the big one with immigration early in the January, February timeframe. We're looking to get outside counsel to look at that as well. That 4th item there is for additional monies for the HVAC repairs, plumbing, and hydronic piping as well. Down there at the bottom, and I think it carries over to the next page, we've got a contract to enhance our Grand Rapids Academic Summer Program, our GRASS program, to add some more online programming for 4th through 8th grade. next item, we've got permission to increase the contract for the Harrison Park Health Clinic. As they started to work through, we did have some unforeseen structural issues that require an adjustment, so asking to increase that. Under general building and sites, we've got this time around office furniture and student lounge furniture for the renovation at Southeast Career Pathways at the 6B building. And bringing forward under the bond projects, phase 1 for Chavez, Kent Hills, and Dickinson for the work that will begin this summer. Commissioning services for Aberdeen, Kennesaw, and Riverside. And then moving services to move Kennesaw out and Riverside out into their new locations. And then one adjustment there, Ms. Williams, from the purchasing agenda that you and I discussed, we did have something that came up with the asbestos abatement at Riverside Mental, so we did add that from the version that you saw, but this is what has been posted on the website. So if there's any questions?
And then also to clarify, as we know, Ms. Luss vacated her position, and so we had to, even when we had an interim, there were some other things that were we had to seek counsel for, so I wanted to clarify that, and as well as the question about Ms. Dexter. She is not legal counsel for the district. She is HR, and so she cannot advise us in this fashion. She is strictly HR. She does not have the credentials to practice law in Michigan, so she cannot provide us that same type of legal advice with regards. So that is why our things have increased. We've had some people leave and people be out in our legal department. But we still needed the legal services and opinion, so we had to go ahead and address that with outside counsel. So that's why those numbers have increased. Any other questions with regards to the purchasing agenda?
Do you expect those numbers to go back down since we do have, well, I guess
No.
Let me ask that differently. Will we always need to go to outside counsel for things like policies and things that change at the federal or state level?
That's what I was gonna say, depending on the level and what that looks like.
Yeah.
We've always had some level of outside counsel.
Yeah.
When we brought inside counsel, it did drop. We're kind of, I don't wanna say, we're not nearly at the level that we used to be before we had in-house counsel, so.
Okay.
And
But
if
just-
we, I know Dr. Roby is trying to, again, still working toward filling the position that's open, but because of the qualifications, and I know she split it some, but that having that specific school experience in the legal realm is a little harder to find counsel, and I think this position has been posted. I know for sure it's been posted at least one time and didn't get a fill. So I know that that's an issue, but the legal counsel and then outside investigations will require most, when they are dealing with higher level, they will always have outside counsel for those too. So I know that that is something that we've experienced here recently, and that has been a part of those costs too. So, are there any other questions with regards to the purchasing agenda?
Yes. How will this affect our sinking fund? I know some of them, some of the purchases are in correlation to our bond dollars, but I imagine some of these would because increase.
And say we currently don't have a sinking fund.
Okay.
Which is part of our challenge.
Yes.
So we, at some point, would like to go back and ask the voters to support a sinking fund, but at this point, we don't have a sinking fund, so.
Oh, I think I was asked, sorry, it's mine.
Okay.
It's Monday. Fund balance. I'm thinking fund balance is the balance I was thinking about.
As we're working through Amendment 2, we're looking at areas where we may not have been spending and looking to reduce those. Some of these may generate some slight increases into the budget, but it's just kind of timing. Some of it also is, and I'm just going to use this as an example, and it's, take it as theoretical rather than there. So like legal services, we do have more outside counsel that we do have blanket orders with. So likely those are not going to spend the full amount on. These two are the counsels that we were using for some of those other items that we've already mentioned. So there may be budget that we don't need to increase because we're not gonna spend everything that we thought we were with some of the other firms. These two firms, because it's specifically, the blanket is to a specific vendor, we have to increase it, if that makes sense.
Yes,
I'm
it
kind of
does.
talking in circles and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
like,
I'm almost wondering, it'd be really helpful to be able to see what, based off of our most recent conversation around budgets, I'm hesitant to be like, yeah, let's keep increasing things, because I want us to be cautious. And so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for future finance committees that we can see. Real time is hard, I know, but to be able to see, like, I just want more opportunities to be like, oh, we're hitting the threshold.
that's what I was gonna say. Actually,
Yeah.
the monthly financial statements
Okay.
that do come in your board packet.
okay.
So that would be one area where you could see, and we'll get to those in just a second, and I can kind of show you where it starts to show, like, here's our budget, and then granted, it's at pretty high level. Here's where we're spending year to date, and here's the percentage. So you
Okay.
could start to see, big picture when we get to them. A lot of our expenses are about, these are through the end of March. So for a lot of things, you'd think we're about 75% of the way through. And they're, usually tracking about that or maybe a little under. We do have a lot of things that tend to get processed through even late June, early July. So we have a significant portion that processes through very late in the year, so. But as far as general expenses, when we get to general fund, I'm really not concerned about where we are in spending for the year against the budget.
And then the B1, maintenance and lease, can you say more about what that's for? There's not really details about just maintenance and lease of general properties. Is that? So, I'm sorry, B1, yeah.
Oh, the
Permission to
applied
modify.
innovation?
Yes.
That is for our printers and copiers throughout the district.
Oh, you mentioned that, but I thought I must have misunderstood which. So maintenance and lease of those copiers.
And printers, yeah.
Okay.
And there's a component of usage to that as well, so that's where it's kind of
Yeah, hard to
a little
predict.
hard to predict of what
Mhm.
it's going to be district-wide.
Okay. And then commissioning services for the new elementary schools. Can you say what that's?
I'm gonna have to
Permitting.
look to my
So, yeah.
facilities friends here.
What is commissioning of new elementary schools for
That is the.
150,000?
The commission agency goes in and verifies that everything's connected correctly and because everything is computerized,
Mm-hmm.
they write the programs so that maintenance staff can read it remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a service.
Okay, and it's for, so that makes more sense. Oh, it's for these ones that are specified.
Correct.
Okay, and that wasn't in the original budget, just because we didn't realize we'd be at this point, or why is that
I think
additional?
this is just one
Part
more
of
step
those.
down
It's
the
a step
path.
in the path, it's not, so it's a part of the original component, but then once we get going, it starts coming to us in those increments as they're doing the work.
Commissioning is required to be an outside contract, so the design firm or the contractor doesn't pay the commissioning agent to check and see that the equipment is installed properly.
Yeah.
So it's always an outside contract.
Alrighty, is there a motion to approve the purchasing agenda?
A motion to approve?
I'll second.
Alrighty, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Alrighty, and then we're going on to our reports.
So I'm gonna stop just a second then on the financial statements where I usually kind of cruise through it, but just want to show, this is our general operating, but probably the one that you're most interested in. So it does show our budget as of Amendment 1 and where we are actual. Just going down through their property taxes, we collect we have a summer property tax collection, so we usually get a lot of that in July and August each year. So that tends to run high throughout the year. We've had some unexpected, significant, large things come in the last couple months, so we'll be adjusting that budget in Amendment 2. State sources, a lot of that is our state aid, and that comes October through August. So 2 of our state aid payments come after our fiscal year end. So we'll record them as a receivable, but as these are primarily cash basis statement, that is an area that typically lags in where we're at. And then we don't have a lot and I'm just focusing on general programs. We don't have a lot in general programs out of federal funding. Some of it you'll see on the other side for grants especially. Some of those we may get the full grant award, especially on local grants up front. We're not gonna spend the whole amount, so we'll do some adjusting on the budget. But also at year end, then we'll defer that revenue into next year, any parts that aren't used. So that's where you'll see some unusual amounts. Federal sources under grants, the big lag there is that we have to pay the money out and then get reimbursed. On the expense side, so this is where I was saying through March, you'll start to see the percentages. So that's where you look at the budget to actual, and you'll see most of them are tracking at or below the 75%. There's a few under grants that are a little more unusual due to timing of things and what's there. Just for example, they're under fiscal services and grants, you'll see we're at 100%. Well, that was something that we paid for out of the ESSER funding that was complete in September. So just a kind of a quick stop there. One area though I do want to focus on the financial statements, and it continues to be an area of concern, is the fund balance in our food service fund. So our reimbursement rates for the meals that we're serving are not keeping up with costs. So we cannot end the year with that deficit fund balance, so there will be a transfer out from general fund to cover. So right now, let's back up. It's, we've got on the budget there for transfer from general fund a little over $1 million. So depending, some of this may be timing, but we are looking at that very closely through Amendment 2. But just wanted to let you know that food service is a concern about what it is, and that will have a general fund impact. Is there any questions on the financial statements?
And this might not be a question for you, but has there been an analysis of what, how much food is prepared versus used, as opposed to just,
I would
being
say
on
we
a...
do some of that
Yeah.
as well, and then we do a kind of an offer versus serve.
Yeah.
So, if a kid's being offered it, they don't have to take it if they don't want it.
Right.
So hopefully there's not as much waste
Yeah.
going through that way, but we did meet with Philip and again today to go to work on some more pieces of what that may look like. And,
Yeah.
the other thing we did do is we do have staff salary increases in there, and that was
Yeah, that's what I was
significant,
wondering.
especially in this group. So that does impact the fund balance as well. So the largest cost in food service are salaries and benefits and food costs. So looking to dig deeper on those, because it is a concern, and $1 million is a lot of money. So now I'm jumping down, and I think that's it. So if you don't have any other questions for service, are we ready to go to the training?
Yep.
I'm going to ask Diane to come up. Diane Liggins is our Director of Purchasing.
Okay.
It's good to put a face to the name. So I'm like,
just thinking that too.
Right. I'm just like, and I felt like I've met you before, but then maybe I haven't. But either way, it's there now permanently.
Yeah, because we see your name a lot.
We see your
Yeah.
name.
I see my name on an email, but. Yeah.
And you have helped me in a pinch before, but I'm just like, okay. So wonderful. Thank you.
Hold that mic a little closer to you. Just so it goes in the recording, okay?
I want to get the echo going.
There you go.
Is that better?
That should be okay.
Okay.
And then you just tell me when I'll advance for you. Oops, maybe challenge.
I'm not talking about statements, I'm specific.
There we go.
Okay. So part of our also emphasis is department goals, so that they're in alignment with the district. So we're aiming is to enhance educational opportunities for students, provide courteous and expeditious service, perform our functions within the confines of local, state, and federal rules and laws, as well as internal policies and procedures. So everything also has to be in alignment with Michigan Code of Law and also our board policies. The two have to occur, okay? And then also maintain and practice the highest possible ethical standards in all vendor relationships. Again, kind of ties right in. We also, besides following our purchasing policies at the top level on our purchasing page, which also ties into the board policies, the 3,600 bids, quotations, and local preference. All purchases must be according to all applicable laws, rules, and regulations. We will also purchase materials, equipment, and services from those vendors that are able to offer the best prices, consistent with quality, delivery, and service. And in no instance will we sacrifice quality. And also not always the lowest price. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Lowest price is not always the best price. And usually when we're evaluating bids, we make certain that we have all appropriate parties that are involved, that they have their hands touched on it, so that we can really understand that we are getting the best option for the district.
And can you elaborate on the local preference as well?
So local preference, so when we are referring to local preference, we're talking Grand Rapids. However, when you look at the Michigan Code of Law, local preference will say the state of Michigan. Okay, so that's probably something that has to be explained when everyone knows it. But when we're saying local preference, we're really talking about the greater Grand Rapids area.
Well, there we go.
Okay. So again, everything tying in. Some from a vendor selection, there's some criteria that we're often looking at to be considered in the evaluation process. Besides comparing the specifications, the performance, if you're using an existing vendor, then you're going to bring that performance level into it, knowing how they've serviced us in the past. And then if you're bringing in a new vendor, also you're going to look at their performance. So within that, hopefully they will provide some customer references where we can go and make a call. Also service, quality, delivery, depending on, you know, what item is being chosen, price, responsiveness to the bid, also responsiveness to the request. If something is asked, how long does it take the vendor to respond back to you? You know, things like that. Experience, communication, and the availability of the vendor.
Is this done through a rubrics process as well?
So
This part?
usually, yes, it is, and those are some of the items that are looked at. But again, depending on what's being asked to quote bid, then you really are drawing into the team who is going to be evaluating the supplier what seems to be the best option. So let's say it's from an area that I don't control, but I will provide things of, don't weight it evenly, because quite honestly, that's not going to really be the best option. So the things that are the most important should be weighted the most heaviest.
Is that addressed in each rubric? So for instance, and this came up previously with regards to a request for us to a RFP, and ultimately the rubrics was kind of just general. However, the board was asking for something particular that was not accounted for in the rubrics. And so I'm wondering, do you guys kind of adjust that as needed, so that if we are looking for something, in this particular situation, we were looking for somebody that was a bit more creative and more outside the box thinking with regards to how we could do some of the work we were looking to do, versus somebody just willing to broker sales and things of that nature. So when the rubrics was done initially, it was not looked at through the lens of what we were asking for, but just kind of, it was the standard rubrics where there was so much weight, and I think it was 30% given specifically to experience, when in this area, there's not a whole lot of places that have the experience with doing what we were asking for in particular. So I'm just wondering if there is room and if there is an evaluation process to look at the rubrics being used in this vendor selection to make sure that it is, again, it's going to really help you get what is being asked for and not just the same old status quo that well, this is what we always use versus, well, this project may be looking for something different. Has that been evaluated going into that process instead of just, well, we're just gonna use a rubric that we have?
Okay, so, and I think I'm understanding you, and I think I explained it, but maybe I didn't explain it enough. So when you develop that rubrics, you have that team and you have to understand what is the most important, okay? So I may help define all the necessary components that need to go into the bid, okay? But I'm not gonna own that relationship, so usually I work with whomever to say, you gotta define the scope of work. Because I can't define it because I'm not the one going to be involved.
Okay.
However, I also advise them that they should have a team, so create a team before this is all going out so that they already know that it's gonna be a part of the evaluation process. I give them a template to work with and say, this may not be it, but these are some things that you should think about. And then you've gotta look at it from the standpoint that what is the most important? So that piece then becomes the heavy weighted criteria.
Okay.
So I will draft a template, but they need to come up with it to make it better to fit so that then you can kind of narrow down your selection on, okay, what's the next price? Or what's the next place? Price, yes, is a component, but how much is it gonna be weighted? If I'm not evaluating the whole portion on price, then price shouldn't be weighted as heavy, but it should be weighted. Okay? And then that's kind of where that team has to come and say, okay, here's what I have, what should be. And then you play around with it. But you should know that rubrics before you send out the RFP so that those that are preparing to give a response know how they're going to be evaluated. Okay?
Could you give an actual example of something recent or in memory, just to walk us through? And I'm particularly interested when you say like all relevant hands touch the process. Could you give us an actual example just to help clarify for us what it looks like with purchasing?
Like,
Any that you choose, something that comes to mind.
I mean, one that we crafted, or I guess an RFP would have been maybe translation services.
Okay.
Okay, where we went with what was important, but then really I needed the help from the ED who owns the translation services to be what was the most important. I can't judge that, I don't know, I don't use it, so that became that piece in the criteria. I cannot recall what the rubrics look like.
Yeah.
But that's how we worked at it.
Okay.
Okay? And then, when you pick your team, it's gotta be those that are going to be involved in it. So it's probably somebody from the high school level, middle school, and elementary. Then someone maybe was, besides the ED herself, but then I'm trying to think, technology was also involved. So you've got all the parties that have an invested interest into the selection of the process.
Okay.
Okay.
And they're developing the rubric together.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Is that good?
You can,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
Sorry. That's great. Okay, so then we have different levels where it's an automatic, it doesn't have to go through qualifiers of different levels. So anything under than $10,000 usually how it starts from a purchase requisition, which it used to be paper, but now it's electronic. And then secretary or an admin level will put it in, and then it'll go to the principal for approval. And then once that final building principal approves it, it comes into the purchasing office. But I ensure that there are things, like sometimes they'll pick a vendor that's not in our system. So I reach out to get the W-9, have them complete a vendor profile. We make certain that they are a vendor and not a vendor that is usually their social security number to pay. So we are evaluating that piece. And we're also looking, or I'm also looking to say, is this a good use of district funds?
Mhm.
Because I will push something back if it's not an appropriate use of district funds. So we would like buildings to get a quote before they engage us in a relationship that we have to get out of, okay? Doesn't happen all the time, it's still an education process, but we always wish a quote would come first, because a quote does not have to be processed into an order, it doesn't give a commitment.
Mhm.
Most of the times, or there's a good percentage, that sometimes we're getting the invoice, so then the commitment has already been created, so now we have to work with it. So that it goes through the process. So in all orders, we would like a quote, then send the purchase order to the vendor saying, we are authorizing you to complete this purchase. If it all matches up, they would send the invoice to accounts payable. Accounts payable goes out there, matches up the invoice or to the PO, and then they will process payment to the vendor.
PO, purchase order, I just want to make
Purchase
sure.
order,
Okay.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Make sure I'm following.
Purchase order PO.
And we do have to have the receiving in there as well.
Yes,
So it's a
yes,
three-way
right.
match.
So just because the vendor applies and follows the process that is identified on the purchase order, the business office will not pay the invoice until we know the goods have been received,
Okay.
okay? So it's not just an automatic, we do make certain of those things. Because the thing of it is that if there's a problem with the order, you want to correct it before you pay the invoice.
Mhm.
You said a good use of district funds. What goes into that decision? Like something is or is not? What would go into that decision?
How can I say, things that I'm saying, at the tail end of the year, you could say, they're trying, ice cream machine,
Mm-hmm.
right there, okay? When I can think of things that could be put to better use
Okay.
than to put that into, just because you have the funds available. I'd rather see it be put
You
into
know it
an
when you see it.
educational
Yeah,
purchase,
okay.
okay? And if you are trying to award something, then go and buy them ice cream.
So you say no wish list items.
You kinda-
Sometimes
you-
I know with my job, they'll sometimes say, okay, we got some extra money, send us your
Right.
wish list.
Right.
And then we never hear back about the wish list
Yeah.
ultimately, but
Yeah.
they do actually do that. So wish list items are not something that you're typically approving, but actual need
You
items.
kind of know it when you see it. If it's,
Right, that
yeah,
is
okay.
exactly right. And toward the end of the year, I understand, we're trying to expend the money,
Mhm.
but I wanna, since I'm the one that at the end of it gets to approve or reject it, I'd rather see that it's going to put toward an educational purpose than.
With this process under 10,000, how much is statutorily required and how much is district policy and otherwise?
Well, the 10,000 is one that we've set for
Okay.
the policy.
Okay.
Okay, and that can go through, then there's that, go to the next screen. Then 10,000 to 30,000, it still doesn't trigger, but from my aspect, I wanna know that you've gone out and gotten 3 quotes.
Okay.
Let's be fair about it, all right? Is this the best choice? So there are things that I will ask if you've done that process, all right? Just so that you know that you are getting the best bang for your buck.
And this price range here, this cost range, isn't statutorily required. This is just best practice that the
Best
district's
practice,
following. Okay.
right. If you were to review other districts at the same time, we've somewhat all have established this
Okay.
basis. So in most districts, these policies do exist so that at least there's an opportunity for everyone.
Is it just a single quote, or is there a competitive bid?
This
So-
would not trigger a competitive bid.
Okay.
Because of the dollar amount.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
But at least it's giving an opportunity of finding other suppliers and that you did get 3. And it's a good transparency for the district to know that.
And to clarify, the up to $10,000, the quote process is not triggered, but what you kind of ask is, please try to get a quote if you can?
Yes.
Okay, but if they don't,
Right.
if the school
Well,
shows,
see,
yeah.
the thing of it is, it's not about, the quote process, and I should say, is between this range is to be looking at more than one vendor.
Yeah.
Okay? The quote
Okay.
process should be on any spend that you do.
Okay.
Okay? You want it quoted because it also guarantees that the price has been established, the shipping fee has been established, and when there is a variance, then you can go back and somewhat challenge it.
Mhm.
So, if
Okay.
a vendor doesn't know what pricing should be, I always say estimate it,
Mhm.
okay? So. Then, over 30,000, that's really $572 now.
Oh.
That's okay. Triggers a bid. So the MDL sets, or the MDE sets our threshold, bid threshold. We tie the bid threshold into our policies and into our e-purchasing so that if someone were to put in an e-purchase request that is over the board amount, they probably don't notice it, but I notice it.
Mhm.
It will say BOE required. Okay, then from there, when it comes into me, then I'm doing my due diligence to see, has it been added to an agenda? Because we do need board approval.
Mhm.
If it's not, then I have to stop the spend, stop the purchase, okay?
Okay.
Which then I become the bad guy. But
The spend doesn't start until after board approval, though, right?
that is
Okay.
correct. So when an RFP or a bid is sent out, in documentation, it always says estimated date to award. And then for clarification for the vendor, it has to go through a 2-step process. So let's say, for translation, our intent is to award, however, it must go through finance, and then it must have final board approval before anything can be officially awarded, before a PO can be cut. If there's any legal agreements that have to be looked at, then a purchase order will not be completed until it has gone through all the proper channels.
Mhm.
Okay?
So, quick question though. Can services be started though?
No.
So, okay. Because I feel like we had an issue previously. Was it with?
That's what I was gonna say, sometimes things
So-
start
well,
to
it's
trickle
true.
through,
Yes.
right, yeah. We really try to,
Mhm.
it doesn't, services should not start before we get final board approval. There are occasionally sometimes where you know, they may have started services and not thought that it was gonna go over the board amount. And
So-
then as the project goes on, it's like, oh, wait a minute, it's
Okay.
trending there, we're gonna get there, so then
Oh,
it's
I
like,
see.
pause, let's get the process and get caught up.
Okay.
Do you have a
So-
historical example of something, like just a particular contractor or something like
Not
that?
off the top of my
No,
head.
okay.
Didn't we have a little bit of that with
Opportunity
Elevate K through
Thrive.
12?
Oh, no, was it that one? Oh, Opportunity Thrive recently, but I think that's because of a grant involvement too, and sometimes that can get complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember what happened with K-12. It's just-
I felt like it was like a 2-week period, like we had somehow like the holiday period, like it was starting, it was like and it sat there for a second, and we were like, okay, we need to. So I remember we had
Yeah.
to catch it up,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
we had to go back and decide whether or not, when we were gonna look at it again,
Yeah.
because it's somehow services started, but again, that was, that's the
Complicated
one
situation,
time I remember it coming before us right off the top.
You don't like when that happens, though, do you?
No. And you know, unfortunately, you do run in scenarios where an area can start something and not pull you in till they need payment to the vendor.
Mhm.
And then that's when it comes in through purchasing.
What do you
So-
mean? Reiterate, I don't think I understand what you just said. We get pulled in, how do you mean?
When I say pulled in, purchasing gets pulled in. So,
To issue a payment, so somebody may start something
Right.
and then.
Oh, you're not
Right.
even, what do you, I
Right.
don't.
They may not
follow.
have put their
Yes.
e-purchasing
Correct.
request in,
Oh.
started to go out,
right,
Something,
start the process.
something started,
right.
and then we find out, okay.
Okay, and then you need to pay the vendor, so it's gotta come through purchasing. Then I ask the questions, and then that can slow down the process.
Okay,
Okay?
So that's earlier Diane referred to an education process.
Yeah.
We're frequently educating about what the process should be.
yeah,
We have a lot of new people in the district that are sometimes still applying what maybe they did at their former job.
yeah.
And not what we do at GRPS. So it's an ongoing process, trying to make sure people get lined up to, okay, let's not get that cart in front of the horse. Let's,
You're not saying, what I'm interpreting, what you're not saying is a program or a service starts, and then come to find out, now the district has to pay for it. That's not what you're saying, is it? Or
no,
is it?
or if it may be sometimes at the smaller amounts too, at that under, it may be something even for $500, and it's like, oh, they've gone out and done it, and it's like, oh, well, I really wish you hadn't done it that way.
Now we
Wish
have to
you'd
pay
gotten
for
a quote.
something, okay.
Yeah, you say, wish you'd gotten the quote first, because now it's come in damaged, and now we gotta do something
Okay.
different, and
Okay,
so. It's typically not our big things. Our big things
Yeah.
are not the
Usually.
issue. It's
Right.
sometimes
It's the
those
smaller ones.
Okay.
Those smaller purchases sometimes are more problematic than the large ones.
yeah.
And I'm just looking at the time, so I just want to be conscious of
Yes,
that. So we've got a
please.
couple more things to get through here.
And then these are some of the requirements that have to go in bid documentation, so, and it depends on required performance, but the surety and the bond information is through facilities bids. But then we all have both the sworn, statement of familiar relationship, Iranian business relationship affidavit, and debarment and suspension certificate. These are required pieces of documents that go in. Some of the languages and rights of, to reject any or all bids, compliance with federal, state, and local law ordinance and regulations, and date, time, and place of the opening of the bid. So usually they're public bid opening, you have to state when it is, and the location. And the competitive bid process is all about giving transparency, procurement method, which bids from competing contractors, suppliers, or vendors. We are openly advertise the scope and the specification in terms of conditions and the conditions of the proposed contract as well. So we solicit our bids on the GRPS site. We are mandated by MCL code that we have to post on a public state website. Facilities, all construction bids have to be posted on Sigma. So we still have to comply that way, but we also have the availability where they're listed on the GRPS site.
Mhm.
So it provides clear transparency of what's going on within the district, and also provides an opportunity for all to see them as well.
Does the state require, like, education service bids to be posted in a particular spot, or just at least on our website? Like you said, Sigma, construction bids,
Construction services aren't necessarily mandated for us to bid. okay?
Oh, okay, I see,
But
yeah.
we
Choose to.
we choose to, when we, are shown it, but
Okay,
it's best for transparency.
okay. And those all go on our website.
Yes, as well. And then these are the different types of purchases that we've done before in the past. Again, this is just talking about what we do, construction, repair school buildings, supplies, materials, and equipment, and then services. There is no requirement to seek a competitive bid. And then there is an exception, and I did it, emergency repairs. That's something that the superintendent can approve. And then other types of purchases, which will come up in another month. Rhonda will present all our blanket orders, which are the normal reoccurring expenses, the legal fees, the copiers, translation services, everything that it takes for us, the district, to operate. And it is far better to put it on a blanket order because it's repeated purchases. You're still analyzing the spend and analyzing the dollar amount. And again, if it goes over, then we're coming back to the board for approval to raise the blanket order, like we've done. And then this is more talking about the local preference and then the policy for it. And again, it's local Grand Rapids. And then these are just some past bids that we've done before. Trash removal services, snow removal, custodial, translation, can liners, paper products, copy paper. We did the Barnes and Noble, the book
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
but that
So-
one was Esser, so it was
Yeah.
a couple years ago on that one.
And then our memberships are to the Michigan School Board officials, NIGP, which is the National Institute of Governmental Purchasing, where it's a body that you are at least collaborating with others that are in the public purchasing arena. I learned a lot from that. And then West Michigan Public Purchasing Alliance as well, so keeps me abreast of what's happening out there for the district and to be aware.
How large is your team?
My team, I have a buyer and then administrative, so 3. Okay.
We are running very lean in our purchasing department.
Yes, I see that.
And Diane does a whole lot, and I greatly appreciate all that she does, so.
Absolutely.
Thank you both for the work
Yeah,
you do.
thank you.
Alrighty. And then we have no policy. Are there any particular questions with regards to the information we received? Otherwise, I will adjourn us and give you a few minutes to have some comfort before we go to our next meeting. All
I
right,
could use some comfort.
adjourn.
Thanks.
Thank you.